In this video, we're going to go over the 7 things no one told me about Syria or about Damascus, Syria before visiting. And I will say, whenever I've heard about Syria, whether in the news or in the articles, on TV, usually it involved some explosions, buildings falling, something to do with war. It was never really in a positive light. And I'm sure for many of you all listening, especially if you're from the US, it's probably the same. So hopefully this video sheds some light on some things that you may not have known about this country. Hopefully you learned something. I will say I have. And this is going to lead me into my first point about how, as a tourist, or at least as an American tourist, you need a guide to visit this country. I've heard in the past that wasn't always the case. Back in the day, most tourists were able to travel the country independently. You were able to see some of the ancient ruins, smaller towns, etc., etc. Now, you're still able to do that. You just need a guide. And frankly, I was never a person that was big on tour guides. Of course, I've done it before. I've did it in China, Ethiopia. I've used it a few times here and there, but normally I like to travel on my own, at my own pace, so I can do whatever I want, when I want. But after my time here, I will say I am glad I had a guide. 1, I learned a lot, and 2, I told my guide this, if he wasn't there, I would have probably been in a Syrian jail or a Syrian investigation room. Because in the city, especially in the historical center, there are so many checkpoints. And some of them you wouldn't realize were checkpoints until it was too late, until you're about maybe 3 feet away, because there are so many people in the historic center. And if I wasn't with someone to let me know, hey, put your camera down. Yeah, I would have been in a Syrian investigation room with the light shining on me. What are you doing here or whatever? So to all the people who have told me, Sly, why don't you have a guide when you go to these countries and blah, 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 blah. You won for now. For Syria, you won. I'm glad I had a guide. You were right. This is going to lead me into the point that I think most people are interested in hearing about, which is the safety. Before coming, I wasn't too nervous. 1, when I was looking up places to visit and different companies and guides, I noticed that many of them had itineraries that visited different parts of the country. And I thought to myself, wow, if you're able to travel to this many areas, it must not be too dangerous. Also, I do this for many places that are sort of off the beaten track. I hit up other travelers online that have been there and to get their experience and their tips. And many of them said, you'll be just fine. And lastly, I've gone through similar situations in other countries. If you looked up Lebanon or seen it on TV, you've probably heard of the war going on in the country. The thing is, it's mainly in the south. The rest of the country is just fine. For example, I mainly stayed in Beirut, which is the capital, and there, business as usual. If you never would have told me, or if I never would have looked online, I wouldn't have known there was a war going on in the country. It just didn't seem like it. So I had a feeling that could be the case when it comes to Syria. Now, granted, I mainly stayed in the capital city, Damascus, and also I was with a guide. But while walking around, I didn't get the vibe of insecurity, danger, any of that. I didn't get the sense that people were worried about violent crimes or petty crimes or anything of that nature. I can't speak on other places around the country, but when it comes to the capital, that's what I observed. The next point on the list is probably something that most of you guys, or let me say at least some of you guys watching, already know about. But not for me. I will admit that when it comes to this region, the Middle East, Western Asia, I just don't know much about it. So it was crazy to learn about how Damascus played an important role in early Christianity. It has a lot of biblical significance. Damascus is mentioned multiple times in the Bible, and I think most people who have heard of this city probably know of it because of St. Paul. This is where it said he converted to Christianity. And also the guide took me to the place where it said he was baptized. It was in a church which was underground. I didn't take any pictures or videos. I kind of wish I did so I can show you all, but unfortunately I didn't. But the point I'm trying to get across is that not only was this city important in early Christianity, but also today, I think it's considered a holy city in Islam. So this city is just important for everyone, basically. And to finish up this point, or this religious part, if you didn't know, like I didn't know, there are Syrian Christians. I believe back in the day, they made up roughly around 10% of the population, but for multiple reasons, many have left the country, so now it's only around maybe 2%. And for people who are wondering, I'm not super religious, but I wanted to visit one of the Christian villages because I heard they still speak an ancient language. The area is called Malola or something like that, but the language is Aramaic or Aramaic, something like that. But it's supposed to be super old, super ancient. The town is on a hillside, and I want to hear what that language sounded like, but never made it. However, it's not too far from Damascus. I think it's like 45 minutes or an hour away. So maybe next time when I'm in Syria, I'll try to check it out. Now let's fast forward a little bit in time, because our next point is going to be about how Syria used to be a larger territory called Greater Syria. I'm sure there was probably a different name, probably a more formal name in Arabic, but as far as in English, Greater Syria. This territory consisted of what is today, obviously Syria, but also Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, Israel. And please don't post no comments saying, oh, there is no Palestine, there is no Israel, or blah, 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 blah. Look, you get what I'm trying to say. But Palestine, Israel, and I believe the southeastern part of Turkey. This was definitely news to me, and I can understand that because there are other examples of this happening. But one in particular that came to mind when I first heard about this was a country in South America, Colombia. And if you didn't know, this used to be a larger country called Gran Colombia. This Greater Colombia consisted of what is now today, obviously Colombia, but also Ecuador, Venezuela, and Panama. There were some other territories here and there, but those are the three main ones. So if anyone's been to Ecuador, Venezuela, Colombia, or at least not been there, but if you've seen their flag, they share some similarities. And I noticed that in Lebanon and Syria, there are some similarities, especially when it comes to the food, and then there are historical ties, etc., etc. But that was something I learned while I was on the tour. We have two more points on the list. The first one of the two is how diverse the people seemed. When I was walking around, I noticed I was seeing a lot of different looks and phenotypes. And I was trying to get a grasp of, okay, who quote unquote looks Syrian and who doesn't. And so I ended up asking my guy, like, hey, who's Syrian and who's not? And he was like, look, everyone's Syrian for the most part. These are Syrian people. It's very diverse with different ethnicities here. And I can kind of see that too, because I was also told that Damascus was one of the, compared to other areas, one of the least affected cities during the war here. And so many people from other parts of the country migrated to Damascus. So it kind of makes sense. Just like in any other place, if you go to different regions, you're going to get different looks and phenotypes. And last but not least, this was a point I was not going to bring up. I was debating if I should talk about it. Then I said, Sly, you got to. You have a unique gift in observing things. And if there's something you noticed that really stood out to you, that's been on your mind, that's been on your heart, you got to tell the people. You got to be honest. That's why it's called Sly's Life. You got to talk about things you've noticed in your life. So that's what I'm going to do. Let me start off by saying that I've seen some of those articles that rank different countries as far as the beauty of women. So the articles will be titled the Middle Eastern country with the most beautiful women, or the Muslim country with the most beautiful women, or something like that. I've seen them. And I just want to say to the misogynistic men that write those articles, how come Syria's not on that list? Syria needs to be on that list. And they need to be high on that list, because I saw a lot of attractiveness. Maybe the fact that they're not on the list means that some of the authors haven't been to Syria, which I can understand why. The country doesn't have the greatest reputation. So, and if that's the case, there needs to be an asterisk, because my head was turning a lot, which was very surprising, because I just wasn't expecting that. That's not really something I've heard about when it comes to this country. Usually other areas get more hype. For right now, from the places I've been to in this region, I gotta give Syria they got the gold medal right now. There are basically a handful of countries in the world that I've been to where my head was constantly turning, and Syria is one of them. And I think a lot has to do with their eyes. I didn't think after Cuba I would see a population of people with crazy color eyes, but Syria beat that. First time I've seen people with silver eyes and also different color eyes, meaning there's the pupil, it'll start off as orange, but then it'll turn green as it gets out towards the white part of the eye. It was crazy. So I think it has a lot to do with the eyes, but definitely to those misogynistic guys who write those articles, if Syria's not on the top of that list, I can't take you guys seriously. I'm just saying. Now, with all that being said, let me go ahead and end the video right now. My time in Syria was short, but I still learned a lot. And I think I still experienced a lot when it comes to the people and just the atmosphere, which is exactly what I wanted. There's a lot more to see, especially when it comes to architecture, mosque. They have churches, historical cities, towns. They have a lot more to see, ancient ruins. But that's not why I went to Syria. I just want to soak in the vibe, and that's what I did. Hopefully in this video, you guys learned something. Hopefully the Syria videos open your eyes into this country, and maybe you saw some things that you didn't expect to see or that you were surprised to see. Maybe you thought you were going to see a whole bunch of bullets flying and explosions. That didn't happen. At least when I was there, that didn't happen. I've heard on the news, they had something going on, but that's neither here nor there. The point I'm trying to make is, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Either way, let me go ahead and end it. Be looking out for videos from another country, okay? You guys have a good one, and I'm gonna catch you guys at the next one. Deuces.